I know people didn't like my I don't care if we finish 9th or 15th comment.
They did not. They did not like it at all.
And I couldn't give a flip. But the point is that if we ever want to win anything, which we weren't going to win anything this year, sorry to break it to everyone, what's important is that we get into position that we can, and we get as many top players as possible. We're not going to be able to buy ready-made players. We don't have the money for that, and there's no way we're catching up with those clubs. So to me, what I thought would be exciting this year would be watching some of the younger guys develop, and we haven't seen it at all. And that really irritates me.
Greetings, Toffees. Welcome back to the Blue Frontier. Everton have faced their first home defeat at the Hill Dickinson Stadium, and Spurs remain unbeaten away from home. James here, joined by Ryan and Shan, and we're here to break it all down. Before we get into it, just a reminder that if you enjoy the show, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Check out all of our links in the description. And with that, we go to the summary quote. Frustrating 3-0. Ryan, it was your turn to choose. Take us away.
I'm going with Sludvig from the Discord. Very simple. Poor result. Spurs took their chances, and we wasted ours. The gulf between the squad's talent was shown today. And, yeah, that's very true, especially if you think about one injury or two really makes a big difference. We'll get to that in a little bit. But the post-shot XG numbers are insane today. Spurs are at 3.21 on top of a 2.08. Ours is 0.96 on top of a 1.53. And no, that's not because Beto didn't finish today. I know everyone loves to just blame certain people for some reason, but no, that wasn't it. You know, we just didn't take our chances, and they came up big with theirs. That being said, it's really hard to ignore the chances that came from open play versus set play, and we outchanced Spurs from open play by a pretty decent margin, and they just had a lot of big opportunities from set pieces. But gentlemen, Everton have not been bad defending set pieces this year.
You're right, Ryan, especially given that Everton, according to the announcers jinx, have not conceded a goal from a set piece this season, right? And two, this game make it really tough. When you see a good set piece taken like we saw today, right, it kind of gives you, you almost kind of have to put your hand up and just say, hey, that's just really good execution. The second one, I think we'll talk about it, there's a lot more to be frustrated about.
Well, you can't forget, though, Thomas Frank at Brentford. I mean, they were so good on set
100%.
pieces. I didn't know Kudus was... I think he's a little more inconsistent. Porro has one of the best right foot services in all of world football. Yeah, I mean, Everton only given up 2 set-piece goals all season, too. Spurs have 5, good for third in the Premier League, but only 2 from corners. Arsenal have 7 and Chelsea have 6. I know I mentioned this before the pod, but that's a crazy number.
Yeah, set-piece goals are just kind of on the rise across the league this year. Teams are definitely taking advantage of things in those positions. I mean, if you had told me that Everton would out-create Spurs in open play, I feel like we probably did pretty decent and got at least a draw. But they took those 2 chances in the first half, and Van de Ven made it look easy.
It's just tough, James, because you look at our lineup and you think that's a pretty tough lineup for anyone to do much against us from a set-piece standpoint. It requires almost perfect delivery. We'll get into the specifics of it. That's a little bit what happened, really, you know. That's, I think, what's more disappointing more than anything. It's already limited, but we've got a lot of big guys in there.
Yeah, this Everton team should be very difficult to score set pieces against. We have some absolute giants. We have a 6'6" guy playing right back for us, not to mention our center halves. And then you throw Beto back there defending. I mean, there has to be some questions asked. Yes, the deliveries are excellent, but you also need your keeper to be big there and rise above the defense and be more reactive. It's frustrating to have them break through so decisively in the first half alone.
Some of this is volume, though. I mean, just, you give up corners, eventually you're going to concede. No one's perfect for sure. But yeah, it's a big story, the match.
I think one of the other key themes today was summed up nicely by a comment made on the broadcast, in that the comment was, if it doesn't happen down the wing, it doesn't happen at all for Everton. You look at Jack Grealish today, 3 key passes. Njai racked up 0.56 expected assists. Other than that, it felt like Everton were very limited in the number of ideas, and it's becoming kind of a recurring theme this season that you give it to one of those guys wide and hope they're able to create something, but teams are starting to catch on.
There's no question, and you could tell Spurs set up in a way to kind of funnel everything that way, and that was fine. They were content with that to some extent. And I think part of the issue is, too, you can't really get numbers out there wide. So Spurs were playing with two banks of four and got really narrow in the second half during kind of the game state that dictated that. Beto's not the best box player. Barry's really not necessarily either, at least not yet. And look, João Palhinha is a stud in the middle defensively. He was 7 for 10 in ground duels. Bentancur is a solid two-way midfielder as well, and not the smallest guy. It's just hard to get through there. I thought their center backs were very good. And just look at the numbers. I mean, Everton were pushed wide. That's not a lie. Only 23% of the attack came down the middle. That's a low number. I mean, we've had lower, but it's only lower if it's really effective. And it's not that we created nothing. Like, I don't think it's fair to say that. James, you made the point that Njai had a 0.56 expected assist number. He made a very good cross to Beto. Part of defending is goalkeeping. And I think you saw a pretty good performance on Spurs' end. I do think it's a fair comment, though, to say that maybe we're getting a little bit predictable. I thought there were some tactical wrinkles today, but definitely no wrinkles in the selection.
Yeah, Moyes really didn't switch anything up lineup-wise, but he did switch things up in how he used the personnel. It's exactly as you'd expect for Everton, but the usage of Vitaly Mykolenko today, especially in the first half, was really head-scratching. I found myself thinking a number of times, you should not be that far forward under almost any circumstances, and yet he was pushed way up.
I mean, I guess it's pushing Porro back and trying to neutralize him a little bit. He's at least fairly predictable. I think the problem is you got a lot of fluidity with Kudus and Brennan Johnson on that side, so that's hard to kind of tactically address. I don't like people calling Mykolenko out as he's so bad and terrible when you're putting him in a role that he's not going to be very effective doing. I mean, he literally tried to split the center backs at one point running in behind. And ran in behind on the left half space at least another time, looking for balls over the top. I mean, I'm not sure why he would do that even in that role, but he was used differently today. So I don't like it when people criticize players when you're using them in ways that aren't necessarily going to bring the best out of him. What I don't understand is why he didn't make some adjustments with respect to that later in the match. I will say this too. I think Moyes had KDH a little bit over to the right side as well. If you kind of look at the heat map, he was sitting there, and I guess presumably that was to create a little bit more balance in the attack. I know it pushed everything wide. I think that's a problem that Dewsbury Hall has a little bit, the inability to really penetrate down the middle and get shots off and create his own shot. But I think it's fair to say it did give us a little better balance, don't we think? I mean, it's not like the open play numbers were that bad. There was some success there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the balance was... You saw it in the second half specifically, right, where we really started to get a little bit more momentum on the wings. But I think from just what we saw from Kieran Dewsbury Hall, it's just the limitations of being able to attack the center made us just so reliant both on Jack and Illy, which puts you in a really tough spot and makes you kind of easy to defend when you think of the personnel that they had, just basically just kind of shutting down our midfield.
Yeah, Sean, that's a great point. I mean, maybe Moyes could get more out of his players now, but I mean, the difference in the disparity of talent, it's not like Spurs don't have injuries either.
Yeah, and then that gets to Spurs lineup, and Cuti Romero is out. That brings in Kevin Danso, who is a very capable center back. But then you look at, of course, Destiny Udogie is still out. And then you look at that midfield between João Palhinha and Rodrigo Bentancur, and that's just such a athletic, dynamic, and very just kind of cohesive group. So Thomas Frank really has some good things to play with there. The front three is interesting. I'm not really the biggest kind of Xavi Simons fan. I think he's still trying to get used to the Premier League, but Mo Kudus just adds so much quality to that team. Spurs have also had some injuries right up top. It's been a bit of a carousel. Dominic Solanke is still a ways away from returning. Richarlison, I feel like, is on a bit of a minutes restriction under Thomas Frank. He's using him effectively. I think it's just trying to make sure that he takes care of him. So that brings, of course, Kolu Muani, who it's just Spurs have used their loan spots, it seems like, very effectively this season. it's a kind of changed lineup with Thomas Frank. Of course, they have Champions League football to take into account, right? So they have to be a little bit more responsible of that. But it's still a very good lineup, all things considered, given the summer business that they've done.
I think sometimes we forget. I know some people were excited that we made investment this summer, but let's talk a little bit. I mean, these squads are a byproduct of multiple years of buying. So net spend over the last 5 years, according to Transfer Market, for Everton is we have a negative net spend of 14 million euros. Spurs have a negative net spend of 652 million euros. And that's what that buys you. So Romero, who is a top center back, maybe better in a 3 than a 2, but outstanding either way. He goes down, Kevin Danzo comes in. Not a cheap acquisition. Draguson's still out. He was not cheap either. Ben Davies is still there. Like, that's a lot more depth than we have. We have Michael Keane on a free to sub for Jared Branthwaite. And that's a massive difference from a stylistic standpoint, regardless of how Keane is playing. That's what gets you. And so not surprisingly, when you start looking at matchups, especially when we have a couple injuries, the matchup, there's going to be exploitable matchups for Spurs for sure with their talent.
I was a little worried about Mykolenko going into today against Mo Kudus, but it turned out to not really be much of a factor because Kudus was roaming all over the place, and we talked about Mykolenko pushing up so much. But then you have the wingers, who we talked about a little bit already, Njai and Grealish against Jed Spence and Pedro Porro. That is where so much of Everton's attack hinges. And really, I mean, Porro's more of an attacking guy. He doesn't really defend super hard, so you would think maybe Jack can take advantage there. But they were still swarming on that side and really made a point to double or triple team Grealish almost every single time he got the ball.
Yeah, Paulinho over there helping out is a nice added bonus. And we don't have that sort of adaptability in midfield either, really. We don't even have a 6, really. So that's problematic. And it hurts us, too, with a back line that is not the best pushing up anyway. To not be able to cover for a fullback that would want to get forward with midfielders, it's just, I don't know. I mean, you saw the talent disparity on display. Not that we were that bad today from open play. In fact, very early getting into the match from the get-go, there was a massive chance in the 3rd minute. And I think there have been several matches this year where we've created big opportunities early.
Yeah, and this is Njai starting to very well from the almost get-go, creating the chance. It's just behind Beto. It's so close to him being able to get onto it. But then Grealish has the shot on target. Again, Everton, as you said, Ryan, this is not the first time we've created a very threatening chance inside the first 5 minutes, but failed to take advantage.
And he hit this well, James. I mean,
he hits it well. Again, I don't think there's really much fault on anyone's part here. Beto, it's a ridiculous, the deflection takes it away.
He's getting hog-tied, too. I mean, it was just ridiculous.
Yeah, he doesn't have a chance, and Grealish has a good shot, but nevertheless, it always makes you wonder, had we gone up 1-0 inside 5 minutes, this is a completely different game yet again.
And look, maybe a little better center forward that's a little better on his feet, not as clumsy, maybe does fight him off and get his foot on it and scores. You never know. I mean, those are very fine margins. And this game maybe changes dramatically, and we could play a little bit farther behind the ball. I don't know. But either way, I mean, we were on the front foot a little bit.
Yeah, I thought our counter pressure every time we lost the ball, really trying in Spurs' final third, trying to win the ball back very quickly after we lost it. And they weren't having a ton of success breaking through our lines.
Not at all.
They had more success as the game went on. But in the 18th minute, this is where things start to get frustrating because despite creating basically nothing from open play, Spurs score through Mickey van de Ven on this, what is ultimately a textbook corner on a technique that Everton fans know all too well from the Sean Dyche days. It's the curler to the back post, head it back across the face of goal, and the man is there to nod it home.
Almost impossible to defend this, right?
Yeah, we saw Everton have so much success with it.
There's probably not enough said on the broadcast about the level of quality from Mo Kudus in curling that ball to a place that pretty much is on the edge, right, of the out-of-bounds line to get to Bentancur. Miko, if anybody is kind of getting after him and defending that, they shouldn't, because there's really no way you can defend that much better than he did. Bentancur does a good job. It's inches away from hitting his arm, right? It kind of hits his shoulder, so of course that's legal. And then once it gets back into the box, it's just kind of where you are. And Van de Ven, of course, the big man that he is, and this is not his first goal of the season, right? He's scored a few. So it's just a really kind of well executed play, and I believe this was the first time that we were down at Hill Dickinson Stadium, so it was interesting to kind of see how the team would react.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you could fault Jake for not getting off the post a little bit and going after him. Maybe, I don't know. It's a really good header back across the way too. But as anyone that's ever defended a corner knows, you're facing the player. You kind of got your body a little bit open so you can see the ball. It crosses over your head. I mean, you have to completely pivot around. It's not an easy thing to do. Very difficult to also get up in the air too when it's bending like that way in curling. It's a perfect service. It's what we saw a lot from Dwight McNeil. Who is still on this team, by the way. I don't know if you guys knew that. Dwight McNeil still plays for Everton. Just FYI. And look, I mean, there's, we already got in the numbers and talked about this stuff already, but it's just hard. Giving up 9 corners like we did today, you knew they were going to get chances, and sometimes it's just a numbers game. But it's too bad, too, because I wouldn't say it almost came against a run of play a little bit.
Yeah, I just think Everton's pressure was really taking Spurs out of their rhythm up to this point. They had most of the ball. They had like 2/3 of the ball, but Everton had 6 tackles, and then Everton had 2 shots up to this point, dispossessed them 3 times. We were kind of taking them out of their rhythm, but it is so hard when you get a delivery of that quality, when you're trying to defend the mouth of the goal and you can't get any kind of forward momentum to clear it. You're maybe best case like popping it up in the air, but you have to react so quickly. So look, the defending needs to be better. You need to win the first ball, though, at the end of the day is what it comes down to.
Now, the sad part is we thought immediately after this that we had responded and thinking, okay, game on, draw, we're good to go. Not so fast, my friends. So we score a goal, just a monster flicked header from Jake O'Brien. I had someone arguing with me the other day that Jake O'Brien wasn't good in the air and wasn't a good athlete. I'm like, I mean, if you don't know anything about a player, it's unbelievable to me the confidence that people have in saying some of these things. Jake O'Brien's obviously very good in the air. He should have watched him play in League One, like every set piece would go to him. Smashes it, bad angle. VAR review rules it out. Now, this is debatable because while Njai in particular is in an offside position, the debate is, does he impede the keeper or not? And so I will submit to you the IFAB rules. And I think the issue is, okay, he's in an offside position. I think no one's going to argue that. Is he interfering with an opponent by, there's several things. I would say making an obvious action which clearly impacts on the ability of an opponent to play the ball. I mean, he gives him a little bit of an early bump, and he's certainly in between him and the ball, and not in, I think, an innocent way. I would ask the question, what the heck's he doing there to begin with? I don't know if he's going to save it anyway, but that's not the point. The point is, does it impact on his ability to play the ball? And I think it does. So by the letter of the law, again, there's subjectivity here. I'm okay with them ruling this goal out. I do think they need to fix the refereeing on some of these plays. We'll get to that in a moment. But any objections with that one, gentlemen? We try and be objective here at the Blue Frontier. And so it's hard for us to gauge over here across the pond. We're not there. I'm sure the stadium was in uproar. We okay with this call?
I have to say, after watching it a few times, there's certain angles where it looks like Njai is impeding Vicario's movement, but then there's others where it looks like he's kind of just standing there and Vicario makes a meal of it. I do think at the end of the day, it's the right call, but it's not as maybe blatantly obvious as I first thought. But I also just think generally they need to figure out the contact, what's allowable contact with the keeper, because it's very inconsistent, as we'll see in just a moment over the course of the match.
Yeah, as you said, James, this game is kind of a perfect case study into just being a bit hypocritical on 2 different calls. But I would agree. I think after just further reflection, of course, in the moment, just very frustrated, just because I felt like we came back. Of course, Jimmy Garner's shot was a fantastic shot, great save by Vicario. But yeah, I just felt a little bit soft in the moment. But at the same time, he shouldn't be there. It is impeding. It was the right call.
Okay, so now let's talk about another call or no call. So Spurs, sure enough, many minutes later, as we kind of go back and forth in the half, and the game settles down a little bit. Certainly, I wouldn't say one team versus the other was on the cusp of breaking this thing wide open. Spurs score right at the end of the first half here on another corner. Now, again, service here is great. I mean, Porro is absolutely deadly. This thing has serious bend on it. It's perfect height, perfect place. Van de Ven, again, the problem I have with this is Pickford gets bumped pretty hard. It's not necessarily violent, but it moves him back. Like, it moves the goalie back. Again, he's not in an offside position here, so that's not really the debate. If he was, obviously, this is an immediate disallowance. But this, to me, seems like very much a double standard. We see this happen all the time. I've been very critical of the Premier League and their inability to control or referee these situations. I don't think it's a good thing for football to end up like NFL offensive line play, where you're running blocking schemes, like running traps and power and, ridiculous stuff. But that's very much what this is like. Again, I do appreciate set piece stuff. I've done quite a bit of analysis in set pieces in my day. It's a little boring, but it's intriguing. But this one, I just don't understand why that's permissible. Like, do we really want a situation where, well, the goalie's got to be tougher? I mean, you've got a 6'3" center back jamming a guy with his forearm and shoving him back and just clearing him out and finishing. Like, that requires very little skill to me at all. I just don't think this is the right thing, and I believe this is a foul.
Yeah, I just think the level of contact in the box, they really need to regulate a bit better. I think the gamesmanship with trying to impede the keeper is, to some level, part of what comes with set pieces, but direct extension of arms, shoving guys, grabbing jerseys, things like that, I just think you have to completely stamp out. And I think if it weren't for the shove that moves Pickford a few steps backwards, he's able to at least contest
100%.
That header and maybe get a fist to it.
Isn't
so I think
that
it completely
standard,
takes
James?
him out of the play. Yeah, I think it should be. Absolutely.
I mean, this is where the Premier League is, of course, the non-Big Six bias really comes into play, of just these calls just kind of, and then to not even be reviewed by VAR really at all, right? There was just no conversation whatsoever. I mean, VAR had significant delays in the second half, right? VAR was time wasting on behalf of Spurs at one point. So it's really frustrating too, because especially you want to be objective, but even NBC at halftime just kind of rationalizing this behavior where Pickford's got to be like tougher in these moments and he's got to kind of jam them out, where it's like, I mean, what is he supposed to do when he gets essentially pushed that way? I understand maybe one of the center backs needs to kind of be there to help, but at the same time, the fact that it wasn't even reviewed just kind of tells me just the level of frustration with that call was just not shared by the Premier League.
I think James has it spot on. I think if he doesn't shove him back that far, Pickford punches it or catches it. To me, that's the difference maker.
100%.
That's why a ball that's served, and it is a very good ball, but it's still close enough within the six that a keeper could play it. I would blame Spurs that there weren't enough people in there really to push the keeper back, but the header is the guy who scored. Like, it's not even like you've got somebody running interference for him. It's kind of ridiculous. And what do you expect him to do? Do you want him to flop? Like, that's not what you want him to do, man. So I disagree. This is a foul to me. I think it changes the game a little bit too, but I don't know. And look, in the second half, and we can talk about and analyze the first half, I think it was fairly even, but you kind of knew what Thomas Frank might dial up. And really, it seemed like a lot of going into second half, they were going to pack it in a little bit and play a little game state and drop back in those two banks of four, keep it really, really tight. I mean, there was very little room down the middle. And when there's not room in between the lines, it becomes very like, yes, great, you can move the ball into the final third, but especially with the caliber of players that they have down the middle, it's very tough to break through. So everything's pushed wide. That being said, we did have some chances. Probably the biggest one was in the 54th minute. It's a pretty darn good cross by Njai. Beto goes with the bicycle. I mean, I think he takes this really well.
Yeah, it's kind of bouncing. The way it deflects, and he reads that and is able to execute the bicycle kick. Yeah, okay, maybe it needs to go with a little bit more force or further to one side or the other. But to get the contact and force Vicario into what amounts to, in my opinion, a very good save, is well executed. A level of athleticism and ambition from Beto that we don't typically see. So I was pretty shocked to see him try to pull that one out of the locker, and it almost came off. Not quite enough. But as you say, Ryan, I mean, Spurs were, I think, very content up 2-0. And that's what that goal right before halftime does, is it lets them just completely lock down and challenge Everton to break them down in a low block, which we really still found ways to almost do, but couldn't quite get the final job done.
It does, but I will say this. The one thing that Thomas Frank did today that I thought was good is think about when he makes that first change. Like he comes out there in the 61st minute and makes a double switch in essence, brings in a more defensive midfielder, Bergvall in for Xavi Simons, who Simmons is going to take a little while, I think. He's a little lightweight. This league's maybe not the easiest one for a player like him to transition into. They do need a 10 like him, since Madison went down. And he's clearly very talented. Big money, very talented player. But this changes them very much. And Richarlison, we know his defensive work rate is phenomenal. And Richie's movement's unbelievable. So he's going to constantly create an outlet. And now Richie just has to go hard for about 35 minutes. Richarlison for 35 minutes is a handful and a very difficult person to deal with. And you just look like we don't have that equivalent. I don't know what to say. And of course, Richarlison almost scores here in the 64th. Tark does not do the greatest job here. Pick makes a pretty good save. Maybe Richarlison should have done better, whatever. But then Moyes waits until a couple minutes after that to make his changes, and I'm curious what you all think about these. I think some of them are good, but you're down 2-0. It's just not. I don't know. They needed to do something to make a change. I don't know if this really accomplished it, though.
To me, it's just really frustrating that there are two immovable guys in Everton's lineup, and that's James Tarkowski and Kieran Dewsbury-Hall. And of course, Jake O'Brien is the one to be subbed for. Or Jake O'Brien and Beto are the ones to be subbed for Merlin and Tierno Barry, who I think the incomings are fine, right? And especially where Merlin played throughout the match, it seemed like a more natural position. But when you think of just the opportunity to potentially put Jake at center back and take Tark off, who just was not having a good match, I'd of course give the manager a little bit more grace if Tark was playing a blinder or just even decent. He wasn't, and that moment, as you mentioned before, Ryan, was just kind of a telltale to just where Richie was essentially going to just dominate him. And then it puts Jimmy at right back, who for stats 1 for 12 on crosses today, right? So it wasn't the best day for him. It's just kind of a. And then you saw what happened was just a lot of just Spurs just swallowing up chances and really not, Vicario having to be brilliant a few times, but the level of flow and the ability for us to be kind of coherent in attack just was not there whatsoever.
You know what the game of play is at this point, right? They're reducing us to crossing the ball. Garner takes forever to release his cross, by the way. He can serve a ball pretty well. He didn't do it today, but, he got one block that took 20 minutes to release. It's just like, God. It's why it's just not – he's a right back maybe in some scheme if you could sit back, but not one that you're dashing up the field. Fine running off the ball, but I hate the Beto sub, honestly, in many ways. Like, look, I have no problem with the sub in general and bringing Barry in. I think Barry needs more opportunities. That's a bigger discussion, but if it's to win the match, which is all Moyes cares about – Beto's the guy you need to have in there. He's not great in the final third when we have sustained possession. Neither is Barry. But at least Beto's going to go up over someone and attack a ball with his head better than Barry. Barry can fly. He's fine aerially, but he's not physical. And you needed someone in there as a little bit more of a battering ram. And I do not understand how Dewsbury Hall gets to stay on the pitch. If you want to drop him deeper and get on the ball more, fine. But this called for more than 2 subs, for heaven's sakes. You've got guys on the bench that can make a difference. You're playing Mikalenko up in the half space, up top. He's not a good attacking player, period. He's already fish out of water here. He looks awful all match. He was not good, nor is he effective in that role. And that's fine when there's a trade-off there, right? You're not going to get the attack, but you get the defense. What does Adam Asnu have to do to get in? Or fine, bring in Dwight McNeil. Or shove Njai over there as a double player and throw Dibbling over to the right. I don't understand this at all. That is not enough. It's not going to impact the match. And I cannot think of anything more absurd, too, is to take the one center back off that can play higher, that's got the pace to do it, Jake O'Brien, that can move the ball, frankly, better than both those guys, Keane and Tark. I like seeing Keane ping the ball around, and I want to be dangerous off set pieces, too, but I just don't understand it. It's very odd to me. Dewsbury Hall, by the way, is good at kind of controlling and help control a match. if there's tight spaces there, what is he going to do? He's just going to get bodied, man. Like, it's just, I don't know. Charlie should have been in at this point as well, too. I don't get it.
It was frustrating to see Jake yanked because right back not his strong suit, but you have the position. You really have to go for things now, and I think Jake could really kind of keep that sustained pressure higher up at center half better than either Tark or Keane could. And, I mean, we did have almost an opportunity to get back in the game through a penalty. This one, I'm scratching my head at still a little bit. It's what I view as a clear foul. Ghana getting cleaned out by Kudus, but no penalty because the ball's in the air. Like, if it's on the ground and he gets cleaned out in the same way, it's obviously
he doesn't even look for the ball, though.
He definitely not at the point of contact. I mean, I think he sees it originally, but then he looking directly at Ghana as he clears him out. Like, well, where is the call? Why is that not reviewed?
I don't know what the counter argument is, honestly. I was very befuddled by this one. This seemed like a clear penalty to me. No?
They don't seem to like giving those when the ball is in the air for some strange reason. Yeah, okay, it's not like it's about to have a clear scoring opportunity if he wins that header, but it doesn't matter. It is a foul in the box. That is a penalty. You have to give that. And then it's 2-1 in the 73rd, 74th minute. Things get really interesting at that point. So
I think what tells it for me, James, is that Kudus comes out 3 minutes later, right? So I think that's a play where I think Thomas Frank even probably felt like they got away with it. And of course, there's tactics to that change. I get it. But like you mentioned, it's just he's not even looking at him, right? I think it'd be a different story if he just had a little bit more kind of nuance about trying to play the ball, but he wasn't. And it was just another kind of frustrating VAR delay where it just ended up delaying the game for us. There were like 3 or 4 of them in the half where, first off, I didn't even know where they were looking at half the other times, right? And they were pretty checked and cleared. So just another frustrating day when it comes to VAR and just not even really giving any sort of rationale for that one. It just didn't make any sense.
Why is David Moyes then waiting to the 85th minute to make his second series of subs? I mean, what is going on? Like, what is the point of buying players in the summer and having a deeper bench if you're not going to use them? I mean, I don't understand this at all. Like, these guys are just sitting there. I don't understand what Aston needs to do to have a game, but Charlie not coming in at this. I mean, he should have come in a long time before this. Fine, put him in the role that Mikalenko's in. Switch to a back three. Do anything. Like, that's all you can muster up. Some of these guys have to be, like, Divling's got to be like, what is going on here, man?
Yeah.
Like, and I don't think it's good for their development either, but forget the development. What are you waiting for, man? Like, there was no indication whatsoever we were some strong threat to score outside the half penalty shout. And we've kind of, I don't know. It was very frustrating to me. I don't understand what Moyes is really thinking in the entirety of this match. And once again, the substitutions, I thought Spurs looked better, locked things down. Every sub they made at least changed things a little bit. And ours made us, in many ways, maybe not worse, but certainly not better. I mean, all our big chances came before the subs came in. I like the Merlin sub a little bit. You know, he could play a little deeper and get on the ball a little bit better, and that's fine. But I don't know. I would probably play him at right back before James, to be perfectly honest. He's played before. But anyway, eventually in the 89th, Spurs finally get one where they break out and get the goal. Of course, set up by Richarlison. I think we see a little bit why Jimmy Gardner's maybe not a perfect option for right back. It's a great header by Richarlison and an easy goal. But look, I mean, looking at the second half in entirety, a lot of game state, but really Spurs only had 2 really big chances, and that's all they really had. They had the Richarlison kind of semi-breakaway in the 64th, and the last goal, which, you know, both those chances combined were almost a full XG, and were finished. The last one was finished very, very well, but we outshot them 9-3. I mean, I think the problem is that, so Everton have an XG 1.2, right? That's 9 shots, though, with an expected, post-shot expected goals against of less than that, and 0.7 of it with Beto's chance, which is just a phenomenal save. So there's all these semi-chances, but the finishing just wasn't there. I mean, there really weren't that many amazing threats at goal. But the key moments are what really matter, and that's what happened today. And I think that's a good way to kind of look at things. We weren't awful today. I wouldn't say Spurs were amazing, but big moments matter. And that just, the second half was okay, but it certainly wasn't enough to overcome the deficit. And the quality wasn't there, but I don't know if all the impetus was there either.
No, I think that the call out on the impetus, yes, Everton were taking what Spurs gave us to start the second half, but the majority of possession, trying to break teams down that are set up low, has just never really been David Moyes' strong suit. Has not been Everton's strong suit. When you can't really get many moments of transition, you're going to struggle, and that's why you see just the couple decent chances that we created, we didn't take them, and that continues to be a theme this season.
It would be so nice to have someone come off the bench and bang, make an impact. Charlie sometimes can do that. You didn't even give him a chance to do that. He made a like for like with Beto and Barry, which I think with the circumstance was a slight downgrade. Even Tim Irabunum can come on the bench and actually raise some havoc. And Dewsbury Hall sits there forever. And yeah, he's a tidy player, but Asnu can't get a game. He's got to make some changes. I don't know.
But do you think there's something in David Moyes saying we have the majority of the ball? Guys like Dewsbury Hall are a little better in possession maybe, whereas guys like Charlie and Tim are ones that you want running around causing chaos in transition. Like, I do think some of that comes into play. I still think Charlie needs to come on earlier because he's still decent in transition and he moves the ball fast and he helps us kind of take teams out of position. But I also understand where you're really looking for that creative moment to break a team down. You have plenty of guys capable of that on the pitch.
Yeah, I think it's probably worth a little greater discussion here in terms of what we do going forward, James, because it's important, right? Because he doesn't seem to have the answers. Moyes doesn't. The players there, you could say there's some limitations there. But I'll say this before we transition that. Let's hit Steve Williams' comment too, because I think this summarizes it pretty well. I don't think there's much to argue with it. And that's why it's important not to maybe get so high and so low on their performance. Lots to talk about, but I think this is it.
Yeah, and of course, Stephen Williams at Steve M. Williams. Goals change games. Think we played decent in patches. One before halftime killed us. Few very good Vicario saves, and not enough can be said about Vicario today. He had a really excellent game. Obvious weaknesses in the team can get greatly highlighted at times, disappointing where it leaves us in the league. It's going to be tight in the bottom half. Just for context, we are 14th as match week 9 ends, and so that's kind of where he's alluding to. But I think this kind of is a good transition to kind of talk about Everton going forward.
Yeah, I think so. And I thought there was a really good dialogue in the Discord kind of about where we're at and what we need to be doing. What are some things that we could be doing? So I'll start off with Mark, Southeast Michigan Toffee. I like some of the things that he said here, and I think it merits some interesting discussion. The first line is really key. We need to refresh the lineup and or tactics as the league has figured it out. There's too much attacking creativity on the squad to constantly funnel through Jack on the left as he runs towards the byline. We have the relative security of knowing we'll be safe and won't make Europe. Let's use the lack of pressure from either end to experiment a bit and see what we can come up with. Moyes won't, though, I'm aware. So, okay, the question is, what can we refresh up? I do think Moyes did try and attack with a little bit more balance today. So Moyes deserves some credit for that. Pushing up Mikolenko was an interesting wrinkle. It's not like Moyes is a tactical dunce here, guys. I mean, he's a good head coach. I do have some questions how well he knows some of these younger players and what the resistance is. But if we're talking about kind of refreshing up the lineup, curious your thoughts on that. Like, where's maybe an area or two that you would really focus on, and where are we maybe missing some opportunities? Like, what could he do?
Well, I think you start an attack, and I think you probably need to look at the three behind the striker. And you could give Barry a start here or there. I'm not going to put up too much of a fuss about that, but I don't have the same issues with Beto that a lot of people have. I think you move Grealish. We're just so dependent on him down the left. I think you could start by just getting Njai opportunities on the left, even if it's just within a game. You give Njai 10, 15 minutes, have them switch flanks, and give Njai opportunities and looks.
Or would you move Jack to the middle?
That was the other thing, is I think Grealish down the middle, drop Dewsbury Hall, which feels so unlikely at the moment. But I get Moyes appreciates his work rate, but I think Jack on the ball in the middle would, again, you're drawing guys to the middle, free up the space out wide. You've got the wingers. I think that's a really interesting potential wrinkle. I know it's maybe not Grealish's preferred position, but I also think the level to which we're catering to an albeit very good lone player and not getting the most out of guys like Njai is starting to get a little bit frustrating.
I mean, for me, James, it starts at the back. And I think there has to be a conversation internally about Tarkowski's effectiveness this season. It just has not been there. I understand he signed the 2-year extension. There's no question he's been a great servant to the club, but you're kind of, there's two issues, right? He's not playing up to the standard, but then at the same time, Jake O'Brien is just continuing to play a position where he's doing his best, similar to Miko today, right? But it's just not, he is not, you're limiting the team's ceiling in regards to a game like today, where, as Ryan mentioned, you could play a higher line. I'm not saying Keane's the best partner in a higher line, but he's better than Tark would be at this point, right? So, and then I think the next question, and I think it's been asked by the Discord, is what do you do at right back? I mean, we talked about Garner. He's not a perfect solution, but I guarantee you he's better than 1 for 12 today on his crosses. Or Merlin, as Ryan has mentioned. I think it's just getting some of these guys on the field, as well as, because part of me also wonders if David Moyes is just kind of holding out some of these like players until AFCON, where December just becomes this kind of crazy month with all these fixtures and getting guys like Dibbling involved, getting Charlie some more minutes. So to me, I think there's things he can do in the current moment. It is very puzzling with Adam Asnu, just because I feel like on a day like today, if you're going to put the attacker like Mikolenko higher up, you might as well just use Adam, or at least use him the last 30 minutes, right? If you want to start with Miko, I understand that, right? But just to not even kind of give this guy an opportunity to play, I think is a bit disingenuous. And then with Charlie, right, you look at how limited we are in the middle of the field. How does he not see from that Crystal Palace match where he just completely changes, the landscape of us being a threat down the middle? I think what you have to do with Dewsbury Hall is either drop him or drop him deeper, right? I'm not saying it's a perfect fit, but it's just, if he is so hell-bent on keeping this guy on the field, that's probably what has to be done as a partnership to Ghana.
Yeah, we'll get to the fullbacks in a second, but I agree with you, Sean. I mean, look, I am under no illusion that I think Dewsbury Hall can play deeper on a consistent basis, but we're down 2-0. And your concern is, like, I want him in there because he gives us some stability. He's clean on the ball. He'll move it around. Fine, play him at the 8. That's okay. Even play him with Merlin and have those two just sit back and dominate the ball and recycle it in and out. I think Tyler Dibbling is being completely misused here. He's at least someone that can cut in and create a chance. His left foot, he can strike a ball. Like, he can actually score a little bit. It at least gives you a different dimension. But what I would love to see is Grealish and Njai combining a little bit. I know they're both viewed as players that just get on the ball and can dribble and beat people, but I think they're a little bit more than that. And sometimes when you stack good players on top of each other, a lot of good things can happen, at least in my opinion.
We did see a glimpse of that late in the second half, with the sort of give and go between Njai and Grealish. I mean, there are two best attacking players. It isn't
speed,
crazy
James,
to think.
at which that was at.
Yeah, and the quality with receiving the ball, the instinct, the intelligence with the runs, I just think that would be a really big problem, especially because, like, when you have them on either flank, if teams rotate quick enough, they can get those double and triple teams. But if you have them right next to each other, it puts them all out of sorts trying to switch back and forth, and I think would really make things interesting.
I think it's just disappointing, and we'll talk about it. So, quote for Andy Swill, and then I'll transition what I wanted to say. Some nice play, but a lack of indecision and decisiveness today. I think that's true. We were just playing slow. The fluidity wasn't there. You had a couple guys on there just like Mikolenko's not going to play fast. He just can't, Fullback limitations offensively on full display. Dewsbury Hall shows nice touches, but is limited, especially against better opposition. One thing that is not mentioned is Dewsbury Hall has never really produced in the final third in the Premier League. Now, he hasn't had a lot of chances, but he was a little bit of a late bloomer in terms of when he came into the Premier League. He was a dominant attacking player in the Championship. His physical characteristics aren't very good, so I don't know what's going to happen there. I think you maybe push him back. But anyway, the point is, no time to panic, but after a solid start to the season, it's easy to get pulled into the troubles, especially when the promoted clubs are offering more this season. And maybe that's a little bit of heightened pressure. But to me, I would love to see Tyler Dibbling cutting in on the half space and someone overlapping him. Now, look, we didn't buy a right back. That to me was catastrophic. It was really irresponsible, and I don't understand that at all. But Jimmy Gardner maybe can't dribble the ball by anyone, but at least he can run back there, and he'll go back and forth and make an effort. I just think there's more than you can do other than a like-for-like subs in the 66th. I don't see what that's really accomplishing, and I cannot imagine a fullback. We got to talk about fullback. Asnu has played in La Liga. He played on a team that was getting pelted, showed plenty of defensive acumen. Did he take risks? Yes. You're down 2-0, man. Everyone watching that match, I was just incredulous that Mikolenko was staying on the pitch. And again, that does not make him a whipping boy. We don't need to trash him and say how terrible he is. By the way, I do not understand the level of narcissism that people have with their need to like be the gatepost of the club and saying, you're not good enough for us, get out. Like, dude, really? We've spent $14 million net spend the last 5 years. You think we don't know some guys need to be replaced? Like, these people are just the most toxic of fans. It doesn't help anyone. There's nothing positive about it. That being said, Mikolenko is limited. We all know he's limited. Like, you can't miss that. Give the kid a chance. Like, he's a good player. It's not like he's not ready for the Premier League, man. No more or less than Barry was. Play the guy. Like, what was the point of getting him? Moyes signed off on it. Oh, I saw him in practice. Suddenly he looks like a real project. You know what? Practice is not the game. It's not. They're different scenarios. I think that kid's a gamer. I would play him.
It does just make you wonder, like, what does Asnu have to do to get 10 minutes at the end of a game just to see what he can do? And again, training, whatever, his physical profile, he needs to get stronger, as Moyes said in pressers. I just think, like, a player with his ability to get up and down and contribute on the attacking end, down 2-0, to not even give him a look is really frustrating, because we were so high on him coming in out of the summer.
He's good.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes me wonder, going back to Mark's comment a few moments ago, referring to a lack of pressure from either end. I think it's an interesting conversation. And Matt Clevey has a comment that goes into it pretty well, in that he says, this match today encapsulates where we are as a club, very much in the middle of a rebuild with holes, all pretty glaring and unbalanced, good in the middle, but lacking that last bit in the final third. I think collectively fan expectation is too high. After so many years of dire straits, we want it all fixed now, but today showed we have a long way to go. I do agree fully with Matt. We're kind of stuck in the middle right now. I do wonder Moyes' point of view. I don't know if Moyes just has this blank slate to the end of the season. No matter how he does, he's going to make it. So there isn't this, in my view, he should have more of a license to experiment and give guys opportunities. But I wonder if he feels pressure from leadership of, you need to still finish as high as you possibly can.
I don't blame him for wanting to win matches, but that doesn't sync with the recruitment in the summer. You bought 2 ready-made guys. You loaned in Grealish and you bought Dewsbury Hall. Both of those were bought in positions, too, that we didn't need, by the way, which, okay. And by the way, you made it very clear that he is not interested in playing Charlie, despite Charlie clearly coming off the bench and being very good at times for us. And I would argue has been a better performer than Dewsbury Hall. So I got a real question about that one. But that's incongruent with the strategy here. What is the plan to develop Barry? What is the plan to develop Tyler Dibbling? You wanted Premier League proven. He's been in the Premier League. What is the plan to even play Adam Asnu? Like, I don't understand any of this. Merlin Roll is being eased in a little bit, I guess. I don't understand the difference between those guys. To me, if you're not going to make Europe, which fan expectations, we should talk about that a little bit. We're not going to make Europe. I don't know who on earth saw this team and was like, hey, we got a chance. I understand the top end of the league is not that great. The bottom end of the league is obviously better. Europe was never, I think, a realistic goal, even on a best case scenario, even with Branthwaite in there. I mean, is David Moyes the right guy as a head coach in line with the recruitment? It seems like there's some things that are not congruent. And I wonder, with bringing the new guys in and who's going to run recruitment going forward, if we may see some changes or an impact on that, because I don't really know kind of where we're going here.
So one thing quickly, just to highlight, and we didn't really talk about it, but I imagine for David Moyes, it's a pretty big body blow, of course, to the club that Jared's going to be out for a significant period of time, right? So that, I think, is something that he probably was not banking on, given just kind of the
Probably
injuries. Not. As you mentioned it, Ryan, I think we're at a place where you have to give some of these guys more minutes, at least. I understand that he has this kind of, I would say, kind of loyalty to guys like Tarkowski, Michael Keane, even Mikolenko. When you look at Adam Asnou's usage, the Kieran Dewsbury-Hall thing is interesting to me because it feels like we're playing around certain players rather than using the collective whole. And I feel like he's a very solid tactician, which would tell me that I'm surprised that he's just not using some of these guys as effectively as you'd expect him to, because I think we all are pretty high on David Moyes as the manager. You know, the recruitment specialist is one thing, but the manager, he's done some wrinkles, as you've seen throughout the season, that would tell you that he's very capable of using these guys. This training perspective, I mean, I know Merlin trains like Maradona. That's what we've heard, and maybe Asnou doesn't. He just needs to show David Moyes the practice video from Allen Iverson to kind of, change his tune maybe. But it's frustrating because I feel like we've had the deepest squad in years and we're just not seeing it. And a lot of these guys have been healthy, right? So that's, I think, the more frustrating thing than anything. And just full disclosure, right? We don't have a cup game midweek. So if there's like a conversation about usage, our next game's next Monday, right? So it's 8 days away. So I don't want to hear this about, we're trying to kind of save these guys minutes, right? This is a time where a lot of these guys weren't on international duty, and the guys that were actually played a lot of minutes. So it's just, that's the frustrating part too.
I know people didn't like my I don't care if we finish 9th or 15th comment.
They did not. They did not like it at all.
And I couldn't give a flip. But the point is that if we ever want to win anything, which we weren't going to win anything this year, sorry to break it to everyone, what's important is that we get into position that we can, and we get as many top players as possible. We're not going to be able to buy ready-made players. We don't have the money for that, and there's no way we're catching up with those clubs. So to me, what I thought would be exciting this year would be watching some of the younger guys develop, and we haven't seen it at all. And that really irritates me. Like, I think that's why I have serious questions about whether this guy's the right manager for that. I'm not saying he's a bad manager. It has nothing to do with that. And I kind of wonder, like, he's got to say certain things up there, But, I mean, do you think he walked into this year thinking, like, he's going to make Europe? Like, do you guys think that was realistically? Because looking at this line, there's no way, if you look at the other clubs, that you would think we'd be really even near it, unless everything broke right. I think he's looking at it the entire of his contract, maybe, but that's
well. I think if you
dangerous.
look at it, if you asked him in his heart of hearts whether he thought it was likely, he probably would have said no. If you asked if it was possible, he would have said, I would love to do it. I just think there's a level of ambition and confidence in the people at the top of the game that they would just say, I think I can get this team to Europe. Despite maybe there being overwhelming evidence, and there is a ton of evidence.
It's not wrong that his remit's to win matches. Like, I don't mean that too, but I'm also like, what is the true goal here? I mean, to me, you got to develop the young guys. I mean, let's talk about the matches going forward. I think there's some opportunities here to maybe see some different guys.
Let's give some context first, right? The last 2 losses were against City and Spurs. And, of course, we got a big win against Crystal Palace, right? So this hasn't been this kind of, powder puff fixture list, right, that we've had to deal with. It doesn't get...
Sean, when you watched this match, did you think Spurs were unbelievable and so much better than us?
We have done a good job of competing in pretty much every game this season, I would say. And today was just, funny enough, a surprise, just given that the set pieces are kind of what did us in, and that's something we've been pretty good on. But if you just looked at every match this season, you could argue that Everton might not have deserved the specific result that happened, right? Both positively and negatively. And the X points would tell you that in the table, just because it's been all over the place. So this idea that, like, we've been just dominating matches, and of course, we win 2 games in a row and everyone wants to throw a parade. Like, you have to just understand that we're going to go through these moments throughout the season, especially when the fixtures get difficult, as they have. Just take the optimism train out the window. It's just, you look at the Premier League, We said it in the PL preview, and we said it just kind of in our PL check-in. The Premier League is a lot better, right? The top, as you mentioned, Ryan, is not as good as it used to be. That doesn't mean that they're bad now. It just means that you have more of a fighting chance, as you saw with the team that we're about to face. One of them may be bad now. Yeah, one of them may be bad now. Oh, yeah. We'll get to that. But and of course, Sunderland just winning on the road at Chelsea, and that's who we play next. I don't think there's an easy game by any means really on the schedule, even if you look at the bottom of the table. However, I don't think there's a game, maybe one or two, that Everton go in and I'm like, there's a chance we can get something out of this.
Yeah, and I mean, even if Arsenal's the class of the division, even at Arsenal, I mean, they're going to be tough to break out and score against, but it's not like they're running up in massive goal totals or anything. But look, I mean, the next couple matches, look, at Sunderland's going to be hard. Playing at their place is difficult. I mean, they're going to make that a fortress, and they did some good business this summer, a lot of business, and that's going to be a tough match, I mean, yes, they beat Chelsea. I mean, the peripheral numbers were still pretty good, but that Chelsea team's kind of up and down, especially on the road. Fulham at home, I mean, we were talking about Fulham's lineup the other day. It's not great. I mean, maybe that's the first match they finally throw Kevin in and he starts killing it, but at Manchester United, I mean, congratulations to them for climbing up the table a little bit. Does anyone look at that team and think, oh, no? Not really. I don't. Newcastle at home, I mean, they're susceptible for sure. A lot of these teams have to deal with Europe, too, so that's a big wrinkle. And at Bournemouth, and Bournemouth's a very good team, but, we always do so well over there at Bournemouth. So I know, man. I'm sorry to bring that up. But, yeah, I just think even this stretch, I mean, some of these teams are good. They're all going to be good, but even today, I mean, we didn't get mowed over anything by today. And I think, we say that the bottom of the table is better, but I mean, God, Wolves have 2 points after 9.
Yeah,
West Ham's got 4, and they look bad.
Yeah.
And Forest, okay, Fulham's down there as well, too. I mean, Burnley, these teams are not that great. So I'm not especially concerned. I think there's going to be a lot of flip-flopping throughout the table, too. And I think we're plenty fine. I just want to see some of the younger guys incorporated in and making more of an impact. I mean, we're not – that's what concerns me the most in terms of performances. We're not making impacts with subs and in the second half by using our bench very well. And it's all become very static. But look, we walked through a couple different options, a couple ideas around it. I like some of those. I'd like to see some of it. We'll see. A game state dictates some of this stuff, but it is what it is. But look, I mean, all is not lost. The sky is not falling. Disappointing result today. I think that's fair. But Spurs are clearly a good team with a lot more talent than Everton.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. The end of end header right before half was what completely changed it and took things out of our hands. And there's a lot that Everton can do to better position themselves for better results in the near future. And I hope David Moyes recognizes that and we start to see a little more variety from the gaffer. With that, I'll hand it off to Shan to take us home on this episode.
Yeah, so wanted to add kind of a new mini segment, and that's thoughts and prayers. First one is quite serious, and that's Sheffield Wednesday, of course, with just the announcement this week of their horrible owner Chinchiri, pretty much filing for administration. And then since the announcement, of course, their fans have really riled up to just try to help the club as much as they have through the entire process. But, there's really not much one you could do, which is really unfortunate when an owner, as Everton fans know, all good and well with Mashiri. But, since the announcement, over $200,000 has been spent in the club shop, and they've sold 9,000 tickets in their match against Oxford. So just hope all the best for their club, really strong fan base, and you just hate to kind of see a fan base as strong as theirs, kind of a former giant, really go through that. However, there is a much more serious team that is going through far worse than they are right now, and I really want to make sure that we highlight that.
Before we have that sort of tidbit of fun, can we just casually mention that how absolutely, utterly stupid and wrong it is to punish a team because their finances are messed up and their owner is just not a good person, and punish him in the table? Like, think about that. Like, your finances are a mess. We're going to punish you so you can make less money. Like, then stop him from like, it's so difficult, I think, as a North American to look at that, knowing how we run our leagues over here, and say, like, you think that's your effective mechanism? Like, it's just so strange for me. Like, your owner's been really bad. Let's fold the club. Like, it's just utterly ridiculous. Anyway, sorry. Transitioning into the more exciting and more fun. Because thoughts and prayers, right, Sean? Thoughts and prayers.
Thoughts and prayers, right? And this fan base needs it more than anybody right now, just because what they're going through, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. And that's Liverpool Football Club.
Try and keep it together. I know this is difficult.
Who has lost 5 straight, right? I've heard things such as Arne Slot is not the right guy, bring Klopp out of retirement. They didn't spend enough money this summer, which I think is really unfortunate, just because I think they needed to spend another $500 million to fix some of the things in their squad.
They missed a big opportunity.
They got 110 minutes of stoppage time, I was told. I think the stoppage time clock is still going from yesterday. So just if you see any Liverpool fans around you, just kind of wish them well, just because what they're going through right now is really tough. I hope that things kind of stay the same, but they don't, right? So just taking a moment for Liverpool, just because what they're going through right now on the other side of Merseyside. I mean, we lost 2 straight, so I get that. Losing 5 straight is another thing. But, yeah, I just wanted to take a moment for that.
Arne Slot's been taking it really well, though. Excellent, very reasonable responses, not really blaming anyone but himself. Not saying things like Klopp would do after losses about, team style of play. I've never heard that before, really. At least he's not reducing himself to that level. Yeah, but it just goes to show you, folks, that even though you spend a lot of money, if you don't quite have the right people to put it all together in the right way, it could certainly cost you in the short term. And man, that team does look wide open, and Brentford absolutely put it to them, despite all the extra time allotted to Liverpool to score goals. It's got to be hard, man. Yeah, hearts go out to the Reds.
Thoughts and prayers. I hope they're able to make it through this incredibly hard ordeal. I know many of them have never faced such adversity in their entire lives, so I hope they're able to come out the other side and maybe not be quite so terrible after.
Yeah.
With that, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. We'll leave it on that note. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We appreciate the support very much. If you enjoyed the show, do leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. Like the video, subscribe on YouTube, leave us a comment. Check out all of the links in the description. Join our Discord, all that good stuff. Otherwise, we'll be with you next time. Until then, up the Toffees.